Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. $2.99 per month. You get host updates, get stuff before it goes to Twitter or anywhere else. Also, you can chat with other Heat fans and with us all the time. Again, $2.99 per month. Off the Floor. The link is right here in the description. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network, Prize Picks. Use the code 5, FIVE. Football season back in full swing. Of course, some of those Tua props, told you to play those over. Tyreek prop, and not even what happened before the game could stop him from clearing the 88.5. Check it out. Use the code 5, FIVE. You put down $5 on your first play, they hand you 50. Get ready before basketball season. Of course, right now you can play MLB, NFL, MLS, and more. Again, it's prizepicks.com. Use the code 5. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yikes. 5 on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust. It's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat. Y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
Welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. And Alex Toledo, you can follow him at Tropical Blanket. All right, we are through the top 40. Greg and I went through the entire thing. We upset some people. I was actually surprised, I will say this, Alex. I didn't think anybody was actually listening. I'll be honest. I mean, we've been trying to fill a lot of time here. But not only were members of the Heat organization listening who took it's amazing that we got credentialed for next year. People think that if they're upset with us, we don't get credentialed. First thing, we want to thank the Miami Heat, by the way, before I move forward, that myself, Brady, and Alex will all be have season passes again this year. So
run it back.
Run it back. We're running it, but maybe we're the problem. They keep running it back with us. I don't want to say that out loud. This is like it's Jimmy, Bam, Tyler, Ethan, Brady, Alex. That's the problem. That's the core that we've put together. Anyway, we will be covering all the home games as we always do. Now I'm going to try to make some road trips as well this year. So the Heat people will get tired of seeing me. But anyway, I've heard from some of them about not agreeing with some of the picks that we made. But I also was at the Dolphin game yesterday, and there were literally people arguing with me in the hallways, like in the corridors. You put Haslem behind Dragic. I seriously heard that as I was walking by. But we do appreciate those who listened. Greg and I, we did 10 episodes. It's like 5 hours of content on that stuff. So again, we apologize right off the top. Let me throw this at you, Alex. Who would be our biggest, most egregious miss? I'm going to read a list of players, some of whom more in your era and some not. Okay, who's the guy that got snubbed the worst? Wayne Ellington, PJ Tucker, Jay Crowder, Andre Iguodala, Jason Richardson, Josh Richardson, Kendrick Nunn, Dion Waiters, Michael Beasley, Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, Anthony Carter, Bruce Bowen, Sherman Douglas.
So many names.
Those are yep. Well, he went with Hassan at 39 when he did that. Like, I threw the whole thing out of whack.
No, I think Whiteside probably deserved to make it just for, that short peak he had here where he was really productive. But man, out of those guys, it's a lot of like role players. So it feels like just kind of picking from the bunch. It's hard to kind of discern there, right? Because a lot of them were very short-term role players too. Like you mentioned, kind of all the guys that have cycled in and out through this era, right? Through like a PJ, right. Jay, Vincent, Bruce. Yeah. Did you mention Caleb too?
No, Caleb made it. Caleb was 35th.
Whoops. That's on me.
Caleb made the list. Apparently, the Heat were listening, but you were not. Caleb Martin at 35.
I was like at 25 last I heard. I haven't caught up all the way, so don't spoil it for me.
Caleb had a significant. We will get to today's topic, by the way, but Caleb had a significant. I mean, like, not just a moment. He had a whole series against.
Yeah, Boston. I was going to say Caleb probably got to be up there just for those moments because it was so explosive, and again, like him getting runner-up for conference finals MVP, it was just one of the craziest things to happen. But honestly, from those guys that you mentioned, I would probably say Michael Beasley. No,
I knew you
uh,
were gonna say that. I knew you were gonna say that.
maybe Gabe. Maybe Gabe. I don't know. Like all of them, like the guys that I mentioned, like from this era, I feel like all of them are kind of similar. Like they
Yeah.
all gave you like a really good playoff run.
I would take Max ahead of Gabe, by the way.
Okay. I mean, they both gave you that 2020. Well, I mean, I guess
Mhm.
Max was better in 2022 in the playoffs.
What?
And I
Right.
would say he had two good playoff. I mean, like Gabe was good against the Hawks, but I wouldn't say he was like fantastic in
Mm.
2022 after that. But yeah,
Oh, by
probably
the way,
one of them two.
you know who else did not make the list? And I mentioned Kyle Lowry didn't make the list.
Oh, surprising.
Well, that's our biggest snub, I think. But I just neither of us. It was kind of like once he went with Whiteside, he said he wasn't going to pick Whiteside or Lowry, and I actually think Kyle's tenure will be better. I don't know. Why do I say appreciated? It'll look better in the light down the
Yeah.
road. I think. Right.
When you just look at like, his 2 or his 3 seasons here, where they ended up, I think it'll look
Mhm.
better with just that. Like he was, for a lot of it, a starting point guard or just like a main rotation player, even though he was obviously in and out and everybody was disappointed with the production. He was a part of it. And to be fair, he
Right.
did give you a lot of moments, just the production
Mhm.
was always inconsistent, but he was a big part of like these runs too. And I feel like we kind of forget about that a little bit. Like we give credit to the Gabes and the Maxes and the Calebs as we should. But Kyle was a part of it too. That's like, the thing about this run too is these playoff runs, guys have
Mhm.
moments, right? I
Yep.
feel like Caleb had a whole series, right? But
Yeah.
a lot of times, like guys have moments, and I think that's what makes it separates it from just like Jimmy carrying them and Bam playing great defense. And all these guys that we mentioned here all had their moments. And it's cool to like kind of naming all of them to reminisce on some of these
Mhm.
good times here.
Well, and not only they'll have moments, but I mean, like moments that made huge differences, like Max's game to get them out of the plan. Otherwise, that run never ever happens. So, I mean, a lot of it. Also, I think we probably gave Dion Waiters short shrift for his contribution in 16-17. So I do
Dion might
feel like
might have to be on that list, low key.
I think so, and I think we went with some like favorites
Mm-hmm.
over maybe players who had bigger contributions, even if it was a shorter period of time. But again, it's tough. I mean, Joel Anthony at 34, you could argue we left players off who were better players than Joel. But again, Joel was a part of the big three teams, and I felt like anybody who was part of the core rotations of those teams probably needed to be on a list somewhere.
You guys put Joel 5 spots ahead of Whiteside.
White's, oh, we did it. He did. He picked both. Joel was not going to be in my top 40. I'm sorry, I like the Warden, but he was not going to be in my top 40, but he picked him. He also went with Kevin Edwards at 36. I think he got influenced heavily by Sean on that one. I would have actually gone with, as an old guy here, I would have gone with Sherman Douglas over Kevin Edwards. But again, we felt like we had to take care of some of the older guys. And then Keith Askins at 40, just because he is like the original Heat lifer, really. And he crossed the eras where Pat kept him around, and not only kept him around, but gave him a bigger role. And I kind of felt like he should be on the list, and we all sort of agreed on that one. But again, there were other players who may have been more productive. But Keith was a central part of quite of what they are. All right, so we're gonna pivot here to the actual topic as we go. And as it is, I've never actually done a floor plan of 9 minutes and 12 seconds into the podcast, but we're gonna talk about training camp. And which of these things, I don't want to say which of these things are most important, but I'm gonna send them to Alex, and Alex is gonna tell me the level of importance of these. And you have to vary this a little. They can't just all be really important. So think about it in the grander context of it. We'll come back and do this, okay? So you think about it at home as well. We do want to mention a sponsor that's come back to us in a big way, and we appreciate them a lot. One of our original sponsors here at 5 Reasons Sports, been to our watch parties, our friend Mark Dela Cruz over at U Break Wheel Fix. You can find it. Excuse me, got a little crack in my throat here. But anyway, U Break Wheel Fix. You can find them at, again, ubreakwheelfix.com with the letter U at the start. U-Brake Wheel Fix is Miami's premier wheel repair and restoration company. Over 20 years of experience and located in North Miami, U-Brake Wheel Fix offers quick repairs for damaged wheels and on most cases can offer free loaner wheels to keep you on the road while repairing your damaged wheel. If your wheels are looking weathered and it's time to freshen up your car, don't replace, refinish. Their in-house wheel refinishing solutions such as powder coating, machining, and polishing will give your car the new look it deserves. They also do all the local team colors here as well. So contact Mark and his staff. Again, it's at 305-748-0112, 305-748-0112, or again on Instagram at ubrakewheelfix or at ubrakewheelfix.com. And here's the new promotion they're offering as they come back to us here. You mentioned 5 reasons, you get 5.5% off your next repair. So again, ubrakewheelfix.com. All right, so let me go through some of these with you. And again, we're not going to rank them necessarily. You're going to tell me level of importance. How important is it, in your view, that Spoelstra comes out with a set starting lineup out of training camp?
So when you say set starting lineup, you mean like one that you expect him to just, that's going to be the lineup for the time being?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess if I had to go 1 through 10, and just to get ahead of it, all of these, even though I don't know what you're going to ask me, all of these are tough questions, right? Just by default. But
Yes.
no, in all seriousness, I would say probably 6 or so. You know, it's kind of important, but like I've said before, so not to sound like a broken record, I do feel like they're getting the right lineups and the right rotation is more important than the starting lineup, right? And it's just obvious because you know the game is of course more than just the first few minutes where the starters play. But you know, I do think it is important for him to figure it out and just kind of have a confident solution, right? And I think we all kind of think it's going to be Terry, Tyler, and Jovic, and maybe it will be, right? If I had to bet, that's what I think it will be. But I do expect it to be, because of what you said, I do expect it to be a competition in training camp, and I think it should be. It's a pretty deep team, right? I know everybody, a lot of fans are, you know, not exactly excited going into the season, but it is a deep team. There's a lot of rotation players, and I think figuring out the right mix of guys, right, the right mix of lineups, is more important ultimately than figuring out that starting lineup. But I do think there is something to be said if it ends up being that lineup that we think it is, to kind of get a sample on what that looks like and how viable it is, because it doesn't have to be your closing lineup, right? But how viable is it with kind of almost all of your best players on the floor at the same time? Kind of just and see how that works.
All right, here's my thought on this. There's going to be a lot of conversation about it. Obviously, this is going to be like the number one thing that's watched, and it's going to be the number one thing that's watched. Well, maybe the number 2 thing. I'll get to the number 1 thing in a second, but it's going to be one of the top 2 things that's watched, because people are going to, you know, wonder again what the fit is with Tyler. I mean, that's what this all comes back to, right? Like, I don't think that Heat fans care that much about who the starting quote unquote 4 is. There'll be some who say it should be Ware if he starts to pop in camp. There are others who, you know, will point to Highsmith. I think most are kind of leaning Jovic. There'll be some for Jaquez. There's a lot of different ways that they can go with this, but primarily this is about the backcourt, right? And so I don't think it's necessarily what Spoelstra chooses. It's kind of how he gets there, right? It's kind of like, as camp starts, is it clear, okay, Tyler's a starter, regardless of what I might have heard about there being competition for the 3 other spots. Tyler's a starter, and we're building from there. And then it's all kind of looking at what the Rozier Herro, because I would think, again, it would probably be Rozier and Herro then, and that we're looking at what that Rozier Herro backcourt is going to be and how they work together and whether that's sustainable. And then it's, okay, what piece you're going to put at the 4. But again, there's going to be a lot of focus on this as a narrative thing, as a personality thing, you know, in Heat fans' eyes, has he earned it? And I'm not saying he hasn't. It's not that he hasn't earned it as being a quality player, but in terms of the fit, you know, are we still here in this, year 6, trying to figure this thing out? But again, he's going to start regardless, even though they had their most success in the regular season when he was coming off the bench and as, you know, a really, really good 6 man of the year. So I think it's going to be the number 1 topic for fans. I don't know that it's that important in terms of winning games.
Yeah.
I still think I think we've talked about this, and Brady's talked about it too. It's more sort of the layering of the rotation during the games and how they get to the finishing lineup. I think that's more important than who plays the first 5 or 6 minutes of each half.
Yeah.
But I think from a narrative perspective, it's going to be pretty high on the list. All
It's
right,
going to
here's
be
this
really
one.
interesting to see like who that he ends up starting and then who ends up being like the closing lineup, because it feels like it's one of those
Mhm.
seasons where we get a lot of different closing lineups. So I think that's going to be
Yes,
more fun to monitor.
yes, I would agree with that. Okay, uh, how Jimmy Butler acts on his very first day
Oh, oh
on media
man,
day.
that's a good one. Oh man, I hadn't even thought about that. You just got me more
How are you
excited.
not even think about it? To me, it's going to be that. Like I said, that's why I just pushed the Herro thing to 2.
No, you know me. When I'm thinking about media day, I'm thinking about how we're gonna manage all the interviews. It's like that's the most important
He's
thing.
thinking about whether or not our video is going to come out correctly, and whether or not I'm gonna
We're-
turn off the microphone because he hands me a mic, and then I accidentally always hit the mute button while I'm speaking. So that's more what you're concerned about. I can tell you the Heat don't give a damn about that. I think they
Yeah, they
care
don't care
about what
about it
Jimmy's
if we put
attitude
out
is going to be.
content or not.
I mean, we
No,
didn't have
but
a table last year, so that's it. But thank you guys for providing it after the fact. We appreciated that. That's it.
oh
But
man,
anyway,
the table debacle.
but,
Thanks for
but
reminding me. No,
right,
but
that was a fun. Can we believe it's been a year since then? Anyway,
I
okay.
know. But
Last year, Jimmy did the emo thing, and Pat hated it.
mm,
I heard he hated it. Okay, like there are 2 things I heard that Pat hated. Well, hated, strong word. That he disapproved of the most. Okay, what Jimmy did this past year. One was the emo Jimmy thing, and
mm,
2 was the we would have beaten Boston if I'd been healthy thing, which he verbalized that at the press conference. But I heard the other one was he didn't like the whole emo Jimmy thing. He just thought it was beneath the organization, basically.
I'm gonna give it a 5. I'm gonna give it a 5 here. I think it's a little important, but not that important in the big picture, because I do think it doesn't. I mean, we'll see what he does, right? Because he always subverts expectations. I don't know what he's gonna do, but in my eyes, like I already kind of have my mind in the place of like everything is up in the air. So being that I'm already there, and I mean everything is up in the air regarding Jimmy's situation. I should say. So with my mind already there, it's a 5. But if you're kind of like, oh, Jimmy's on the team for the time being, and maybe you weren't quite, nervous enough about whether or not he's going to be on the team a year from now, maybe this is what does it for you, right? If you're like a casual fan, and then you find out on media day there's stuff coming out that like Jimmy is, I don't know, like not speaking to certain people, or I don't know, like I don't know what he's gonna do, what he's gonna not say, what he's gonna not do. Who knows how he's gonna go about it? That's actually it's good that you brought that up, because I hadn't really been thinking about that. I don't know what he's gonna do that first day, but you know, maybe he blows it up. Maybe he tries to blow it up and brings attention to it. I don't know. You know him. He's very like he's gonna do the opposite of what you think he's gonna do. And he
Right.
maybe you think he's gonna be like quiet about the situation and not address it, and he does the opposite. It's hard to predict him with the way that he's such a contrarian. But I do think it's like if he can shed any light as to how he feels about the situation, then I think it's more than a 5. I think it's like a 7 or an 8 to bring some clarity to the situation. I really don't know what to expect, and I don't know if that's a cop out answer. Sorry, but I really don't know with Jimmy.
Well, I don't even think the people around him know what to expect. I don't know that he's thought about the Miami Heat since that last day. I really don't. I'm not I'm not trying to create controversy here. I'm just saying I don't. There hasn't been a whole lot of communication. I know that um, between the parties, and I just I don't know. I don't know how he's going to come in. But I do know this. Okay. However, you're right. However, we expect him to come in, he's going to do something totally different. I mean, I would think that it's like the biggest thing would be like what is going to trip out the producers at ESPN, and I guess it's NBC. Well, is the NBC's thing start this year? I can't even know.
No, I think it's
But
next year.
next year, okay. So TNT another year. Like, what is going to make them laugh the most or frustrate their producers the most by like what picture he takes? That will be the picture that they have to use the entire year because it's the one he does at media day. Um, that's I'm sure he's thought about that. I'm sure he's thought about that. But I
Yeah,
don't
another
think
haircut would
that.
be cool. I just hope he doesn't like blow up the situation, ask for a trade like on the mic or something.
See, I don't think he. First thing, I don't think he wants that.
No, I don't think he wants it either.
But I also don't think he would. I don't think he would do that with this organization. I just think. I think that's the part of this that is different that people are not taking into account. That he didn't
This
have
is in
any
Minnesota.
respect for the Minnesota organization, right? I mean, for
Mhm.
Tibbs, but not for the grand scheme of the whole thing, and for some of his teammates. And so it was a little bit different than here, where I don't really think he wants to sully his legacy, even if he's really pissed off. I just don't think he wants to do that. The relationship he built with Spo, in particular, I don't see that.
Mhm.
But there are ways to get under people's skin that he's very good at. As good as anybody, and the trolling and trolling and kind of little passive aggressive petulant, like I do think we could see some of that, but I don't know. I really don't. I mean, the emo thing came out of nowhere, so
I can't
we
wait
were
to
all
hear what he
sitting,
says because he's gonna get
right.
asked about the situation, right? Like that's
Yeah.
allowed, isn't it?
Oh no, they're not going to stop us from asking about it. I mean,
It's
and
gonna be an
again,
interesting day.
it will be an interesting day. I was actually, just to bring this back to something, and then we'll get more in training camp stuff. I will be curious a little bit. I say they're not going to stop us from asking about it. I will be curious how the Heat handles it overall. Because again, they don't censor Pete. I want to be clear on that. In fact, I was surprised. Like, I was at the Dolphins game on Sunday, and I was really surprised how forthright the Dolphins were, because the Dolphins had a history for 25 years, and I covered them. And it's a different PR staff at this point, but of like avoiding topics, like controversial topics. And they put Tyreek Hill out there yesterday. They put Calais Campbell out there yesterday. Like, they addressed the situation, and then Mike McDaniel did. I always prefer when the organizations do it that way. And I think the Heat will handle it that way, but there's a fine line here. I mean, he's your best player. Like, I mean, some may argue Bam is gaining, but he has been your signature player of this build, Jimmy Butler,
Yep.
and it is the only thing really that the national media is going to pay attention to.
Yeah, like I'm sure you
So
want to
because they're
have
going to
like a
start
unifying.
speculating on whether, right?
It's just like, yeah, for sure. I think they're gonna like the Heat want like them to be on the same page. Like I'm sure that's what they want, and for them to be like this unified front. There's nothing to
Mhm.
worry about. We're gonna handle it when we handle it, and maybe that's how it goes. I wouldn't be surprised. Like I would probably still bet that it's gonna be like Jimmy doesn't say anything controversial as far as the contract, and he just says kind of, I'm a Miami Heat player, and I'm gonna. I want to win. I still believe we can win a championship. He's going to be repeating that sentiment that we've heard. And I'm not saying that like in a negative way. I believe that he believes that they've come close, right? So, I think he's going to be, talking about how he wants to win a championship. I think he's going to put down the kind of narrative about whether or not he's going to be, with the Heat a year from now, the extension talks and all of that. It'll be asked. I think he'll put it down. But you just, like I said, you just never know with him what he's going to say, what he's going to do. I don't think it's going to be a Minnesota situation, but it is just one of those like wild card things where, maybe he just, he slips up or he says something that, kind of tells you a little bit about how he's feeling. It's just been so quiet so far that whatever he says is going to be very newsworthy.
Well, the other thing about it is that Spo is going to set the tone for it in some way, because the way that media day typically works is Spoelstra speaks first. I think it's been that way every year, but maybe one year where it got flipped. But like, typically Spoelstra will speak first, and then the core players will come out to the podium. So my guess would be probably Bam, Jimmy, Tyler. If Jimmy even talks, I would assume he's going to talk on media day. But remember, he didn't have to talk to us the last day of this, the exit, not the exit interviews, but the day of the exit interviews, and he didn't. And nobody in the local media has heard from him since. I mean, he's done some promotional interviews, he does some stuff with some national outlets, but nobody locally has heard from him. So this is gonna be the first time we've gotten a chance to ask him anything that's more relevant to this organization, not to coffee, not to tennis, not to this, but to his actual future with the Miami Heat. And I would assume he's going to make himself available. So I will start there. But Spoelstra is going to set the tempo for it. And my guess is he'll have some theme in his head regarding this that will be team centered. And he will talk about his alignment with Jimmy. Similarly to when I asked him a question at that last day of the year, last day of the season, and he talked about the I said is similar to Dwayne in any way, or he compared it to Dwayne in terms of the way that they've kind of grown together. And obviously, his relationship with Jimmy is different than his relationship with Dwayne. But it's clear that Spo is trying to set again a tone of alignment, that we are together on this thing. We're all moving forward as members of the Miami Heat organization. Business will be handled. Pat will take care of that, et cetera, et cetera. Pat or the Harrisons or whatever. And but we're going to move forward, with a team that we believe could compete. That's, I think, the tone that they're going to set. But then if Jimmy talks and says anything different than what Spoelstra says, then we're in a different place there. And you and I experienced that, not with Jimmy, but I remember with Dion Waiters at training camp in Palm Beach. Remember? And I think we provoked Dion to talk about his role, and then Spo was not really happy with the way that Dion presented it. A little different with with Jimmy as opposed to Dion. All right, let me go through a couple more of these here quickly. So, how important is this? Kind of settling on what Kel'el Ware's role is going to be this season.
And do you mean like as far as having that role figured out after training camp?
Yeah, having an idea of how much he's going to contribute. Not necessarily is he going to start. He's going to be, how many minutes he's going to play, but is he going to contribute?
7. And that might be higher than maybe people thought I would go, just because I haven't been very high on the idea of him starting with Bam. I don't think that's going to happen this year or anytime soon. Not that I'm down on him as a prospect. I just think it's up in the air because of the guys currently on the roster, and of course what we've seen with like who Spo likes to put next to Bam. And I do think Jovic earned that spot. I think Haywood obviously, has made the case for that too. Has shown you a lot. And I don't think he's going to be the starting four. You never know. He could be. But I think Jovic is probably the likely guy to start next to Bam. And I think Haywood has a much better case. I don't think Ware is somebody who is ready for that. And I say that even though Bam, I feel better about his shot. I think you're trying to kind of pigeonhole two guys who might not be great fits next to each other. And you could work it out. You could play them together. But if what you're going for is to find the best lineups and to play your best players, I don't think he fits. And I also say that just because it's like I think it's a fit thing, and I don't think he's one of your best players yet. Like, he's a great prospect. I'm excited to see him play, and I hope he plays. I hope it's not a thing where, we don't see him till like January and he's not in the rotation till then. It's going to be easier said than done because, again, like K-Love is still good and was so positive for them these past couple of seasons. And, I wonder if Ware plays on nights where Love does. That's just where I am, because it's like, if he's not going to play next to Bam, I don't know if he's going to play next to Love. Maybe he plays next to Jovic. But it's just a lot of front court spots there. Maybe you move Haywood down, you move Jimmy down, and they're more just 2 threes now. I don't know if that's how you work it out. Maybe that's what you do. You just play a little bigger. I'm a little bit skeptical. that that's what they do, just from, the history of it. I think they kind of work guys in slowly. And yes, like, they've been willing to give rookies, big roles, whether, off the bench or as starters. I don't know that Ware fits the bill for this team for that, with a team that, thinks of himself as a contender. I don't know if that's going to be the move. But again, I would be very disappointed. Just like I went into last year, going into Jovic and Jaquez, saying that I would be very disappointed if they didn't play. I think that's what the regular season is for. And I don't think they have like such a regular season powerhouse that you can't play these young guys. You know what I mean? I don't think it's a situation where they have no space. I think there is space for them to play. And I think you got to, like, it would be nice to know early on that, like, yeah, Ware is going to be either an every night guy or some of the time guy, where it's like whenever Love doesn't play, Ware plays. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case.
All right. How important is it to you that guys like that are coming off injury, 3 in particular, Terry Rozier, Duncan Robinson, and Josh Richardson, consistently work in training camp? In other words, where it's not like there's a bunch of rest days, there's a bunch of days they can't go. And again, there's going to be a medical plan for all of them, depending on where they are come September 30th, into October 1st. In terms of, again, how healed they are. Duncan had a situation that he just, supposedly needed rest. He seems to be fine now. Terry Rozier, they didn't want to risk a long-term situation. there with what he was dealing with. Of course, Josh Richardson's coming off the shoulder. But when there's a lot of communication about communication, but there's sort of an organizational decree now about availability that Riley's put that out there. If you end up having a camp where we don't see much of those three guys in particular because they're not fully healed, how much of a concern is that? How important is it that we see them playing a lot in camp and in the preseason games?
To me, that's easily an 8, maybe even a 9, just because, like we talked about so much, right? Ever since the trade, we haven't been able to see a real sample of all these guys together because there was always guys in and out. And so to start the season, on that same kind of note, even if it's better, but like if there's concern about, them not doing 100% of the work that others are at this, you know what I mean? Like if it sounds like they're just kind of a little bit behind, even if it's in a better spot than like April or whatever, I think that's really concerning because you need to get that sample. And look, 82 games, right? It's a long season. You'll probably find some time with all those guys healthy, but it always feels like it's, never enough. Like you don't see too much of it. It's always guys in and out. So I think you got to start the season off right. And Terry and Duncan specifically, Josh to a lesser extent, but he was a rotation player. But it's very important, I think, for Terry and Duncan to get back to playing their game and to, look comfortable out there. I think that's going to be two of the, biggest storylines as far as the product on the court, right? Is how close to 100% are Terry and Duncan, because those are two guys who are just a huge part of what they did last season. Duncan more kind of like the first half of the season, and even I would say for most of the regular season until the back injury happened. He just had a fantastic season and really came out with these extra, just polishing his game and the extra skills. And I think him getting back to that would be fantastic for the Heat and their anemic offense. Terry was obviously a very big addition, and so you don't want to see those guys kind of starting off already, with fans having to worry about whether or not they're going to be ready for game one. And I that's really important to me. You got to figure out what you have there with that backcourt.
I'm with you. I mean, and again, you can't have a situation where we're talking about guys being more available and then being held out, for say all of camp. And I don't expect that to happen. And then there may be reasons to hold them out or put them on pitch counts and other things along those lines, just to make sure that they don't have a setback. But if they come out of training camp and there are 4 or 5 guys that we don't know where they are from a health perspective, that's not good. Like there is some depth on this team, but you're right. There needs to also be some continuity, getting some regular lineups going into the season and layering the rotation the way that he likes to do it. And again, getting to the finishing lineup. All right, I'm going to close with this one because I think this one is the one that's going to be the most overrated in camp, and it never ends up really meaning anything. There will be a lot of stories written and a lot of talk about the two ways and like whether or not they replace one of them and what happens with, they say, Drew Smith and all this stuff. And all I want to say is, and I know we did podcasts on it because we were trying to get through 3 months. Ultimately, it's not going to have a big impact on the winning this year. It's just not. Like I get it that they play their two ways more than other teams do, and I get it that Caleb Martin was a two-way and that Max Strus at one point was a two-way. But ultimately, the success of this team is going to be determined. I mean, as far as whether they're going to be competing this year, it's going to be determined by what Jimmy Butler they're getting, not whether Drew Smith is a two-way.
What Jimmy Butler are getting, like if you can figure out the rest of those core guys all together and what that comes out to, for sure, you're right. I think this is like a 3 maybe, because maybe just you give them a little bit. I give it a little bit more than like a 1 or a 2, just because the Heat play their two-way guys more. But if we're being real, like just looking at the roster and how many playable bodies they've got as far as established guys, vets, young guys, you should not be getting to the two-way spots as far as like guys you're playing. That should only happen if there's like multiple injuries. You shouldn't be one injury away from playing your two-way guys, just as a general thing. And I think that applies definitely to this Heat roster. Like you've got guys who are probably going to be just outside of the rotation who are going to climb in when guys are out. And if there's two-way guys playing, and and that's with me being high on Kashad Johnson and me being really impressed by what I saw with Josh Christopher and Isaiah Stevens, who might get a two-way later on. Like I'm really impressed with those guys, encouraged what I saw. It's just factual. Like, Josh Richardson, Alec Burks, Kel'el, and then of course Ware and Larson, like all those guys that we might think of like, more or less in the back end of the rotation or might be right out of the rotation. All those guys are going to be ahead of the two-way guys. They've got more than enough playable bodies, and so it's not going to affect too much. But I am looking forward to seeing them play when they do get the shot, when there's inevitably like 6 injuries in January or something.
Well, yeah, that's great. That's a very positive way to look at it, but probably where we're headed. Anyway, I'm just trying to figure out what he's gonna follow up emo Jimmy with. I don't know. It's
Maybe he'll
could
come
be
out with
just
like an old school like Dr. J afro, like very stylized. That would be cool.
I mean, you get credit for that if he ends up doing it. I mean,
There's
we'll
a
see.
prediction.
It's all right. There's our prediction. All right. Thanks, Alex. I know we're all over the place in this episode, but we're just careening towards training camp at this point. Again, check out. This is why we're credentialed. It's for great analysis like this. All right. Thanks, Alex. Brady will be back with me tomorrow, I believe. Greg is in Miami right now.
Yes,
He's in
that's right.
Miami.
We
So
gotta
we
all
have to
hang out,
figure
all
out a
four
way.
of us. That's rare.
What I don't no, not rare. We've never done it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's never happened.
Sean has been with us, but not down there, but not Greg. I think all at the same time. So we'll try to see if we can get that done. Maybe we'll do a podcast together this week. All right, everybody. Price Picks. Use the code 5FIVE. Sign up for Off the Floor, and of course check out ubreakwheelfix.com.
We can't meet up all four of us without recording something.